Briefings to the president continue, with President Lee Jae-myung vowing full support for science and technology and calling it the key to prosperity. He pledged a record 35 trillion won for R&D, stressing that researchers must not be afraid of trial and error. Seoul and Washington hold their first nuclear consultative group meeting under their respective new administrations. The allies reaffirmed the U.S. extended deterrence commitment, leveraging the full spectrum of American military capabilities. Search operations for two missing workers at the Gwangju Library construction collapse site were suspended for most of Friday due to safety risks. President Lee has ordered the mobilization of all available human and material resources for the rescue. Good evening. Welcome to Newscenter. We start with the second day of progress briefings by government entities, and today the Science Ministry took to the podium. President Lee Jae-myung also took this opportunity to highlight the importance of investments in the field of science and technology for future prosperity. Our correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
역사적으로 또 그러하지만 이 과학기술을 존중하는 사회 또는 국가, 과학기술에 투자하는 국가는 흔했습니다.
That was the assessment by President Lee Jae-myung as he was briefed by his science minister on key tasks as part of government ministries' back-to-back policy briefings for 2026. Noting the U.S. and China as an example, President Lee called for the need to invest more in science and technology, vowing to undo the budget cut for the R&D sector by the previous administration.
우리가 한때 대한민국의 성장 발전의 토대가 공부, 학습에 있다는 또는 설적으로 얘기하면 연구개발 투자에 있다는 사실을 잠깐 망각한 때가 있었죠. 상당히 큰 타격이 있었습니다.
In 2026, a record high of 35 trillion won, worth over 24 billion US dollars, will be allocated for R&D. He also called for the need to create an environment where scientists and researchers are not afraid of trial and error, pointing out a government evaluation system that solely focuses on the success of research projects.
연구 실패하는 게 너무 당연한 거잖아요, 원래는. 장기 과제나 아니면 공공 영역의 R&D는 성공을 많이 하는 게 이상한 거예요. 근데 우리는 실패했다고 비난하고 성공하면 과제 더 주고 그러잖아요.
For that, he stressed the role of public officials.
여기 계신 공직자 여러분들의 마음의 자세와 태도가 정말로 중요합니다. 그 사회가 흥하냐 망하냐는 결국은 그 사회의 권한을 가진 사람들, 자원 배분의 권한을 가진 사람들에 달려 있는 것 같아요.
Friday's policy briefings in the administrative city of Sejong were also televised live in full. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Following the massive personal data breach at South Korean e-commerce giant Coupang, President Lee Jae-myung has called for tougher financial penalties against companies responsible for such leaks. Speaking at a policy briefing by the Personal Information Protection Commission on Friday, President Lee says sanctions should be strong enough to make companies fear they could go out of business. Under current regulations, companies can be fined up to 3% of their total revenue for data breaches, calculated based on the average revenue over the past 3 years. Lee suggested imposing penalties based on the highest revenue during that period, rather than the 3-year average. In response, the Commission's chairperson said they're considering raising fines up to 10% of revenue in cases of repeated, serious violations. South Korea and the U.S. have held their first nuclear consultative group meeting since President Lee Jae-myung took office. During this, the U.S. reaffirmed its commitment to providing extended deterrence to South Korea. Our Cha Yoon-kyung reports.
The fifth meeting of the Nuclear Consultative Group, the South Korean-U.S. Standing Consultative Body on Nuclear Deterrence, was held on Thursday local time in Washington, D.C. Seoul's Ministry of National Defense said the meeting marked the first NCG session since South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and U.S. President Donald Trump took office. The meeting was attended by Kim Hong-cheol, Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy, and Robert Sufer, Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Deterrence, Chemical and Biological Policies. After the meeting, the two sides released a joint statement. Deputy Minister Kim asserted that South Korea will continue to lead in maintaining and strengthening its conventional defense capabilities. Sufer reiterated Washington's pledge of extended deterrence to South Korea by leveraging the full spectrum of U.S. military capabilities, including its nuclear forces. The two sides agreed that enhanced nuclear deterrence exercises are helping improve the allies' decision-making coordination in potential nuclear contingencies. The Nuclear Consultative Group was launched in 2023 following the Washington Declaration, reaffirming the country's commitment to nuclear non-proliferation and the peaceful use of nuclear energy. 차윤경, 아리랑 뉴스.
The Finance Ministry has reaffirmed its assessment that the Korean economy is on a recovery path, but adds that inflation remains a viable concern. Our correspondent Moon Ji-young reports.
The South Korean economy is continuing on a gradual recovery path. In its latest Green Book, the Ministry of Economy and Finance said domestic consumption is improving and semiconductor-led exports continue to show strength, helping the economy move out of the sluggishness seen in the first half of the year. But the ministry also pointed to volatility in monthly indicators due to long holiday periods and base effects, as well as ongoing employment challenges in vulnerable sectors. Industrial output in October fell 2.5% from a month earlier, the biggest drop in nearly 6 years, largely due to a sharp fall in semiconductor production, while service sector output also dipped slightly. Still, consumption showed resilience. Retail sales rose 3.5%, supported by stronger demand for semi-durable and non-durable goods as consumer sentiment climbed to its highest level in 8 years. Additionally, the number of Chinese visitors to Korea jumped nearly 27% from a year ago. Inflation, however, remains a concern. Consumer prices rose 2.4% in November, driven by higher agriculture and petroleum prices and the impact of a stronger U.S. dollar.
Rising prices for agricultural products and petroleum are adding pressure to household living costs. And with the weaker won also putting upward pressure on inflation, we plan to strengthen our policy response.
The ministry also warned that global uncertainties remain elevated, with major economies imposing new tariffs and trade tensions weighing on growth. To support momentum, the government plans to accelerate next year's budget execution from early 2026 and step up efforts to further boost domestic demand. Moon Ji-young, 아리랑 뉴스.
Import prices in South Korea rose at their fastest pace in 19 months in November. The Bank of Korea says the weaker Korean won played a central role in driving costs higher. Lee Seung-jae has the details.
Import prices in South Korea rose at their fastest pace in 19 months in November, even as global oil prices declined. New data from the Bank of Korea on Friday shows that the weaker Korean won played the central role in driving costs higher. According to the preliminary figures, the import price index climbed 2.6% on month in November. That is an acceleration from the 1.9% increase recorded in October, and marks the fastest monthly gain since April 2024, when the index jumped 3.8%. It's also the fifth straight month of rising import prices. On a year-on-year basis, the index increased 2.2%. The report points to a significant depreciation of the Korean won. The currency averaged 1,457.77 won per dollar in November, compared with 1,423.36 won in October. That weaker exchange rate raised the cost of bringing goods into the country, even though oil prices moved in the opposite direction. Dubai crude, which is South Korea's key benchmark, edged down 0.8% to $64.47 a barrel. Economists note that import prices are a critical part of the broader inflation picture. Higher import costs flow directly into production expenses and can eventually push up consumer prices across the supply chain. That dynamic is likely to influence the central bank's outlook as it monitors inflation and currency stability heading into the new year. The data also highlights movement on the export side of the economy. The export price index rose for a fifth consecutive month in November, up 3.7% from October. Although the pace slowed from the 4.1% increase seen in the previous month, the continued upward trend suggests that Korean exporters are feeling the effects of both currency shifts and recovering global demand. Analysts say the combination of rising import and export prices underscores the challenges and opportunities facing the Korean economy at a time of volatile currency markets and global uncertainty. The BOK is expected to watch these indicators closely as it shapes policy in the months ahead. 이승재, 아리랑 뉴스.
Mexico is imposing import tariffs of up to 50% on goods from South Korea, China, and other Asian nations that analysts believe are aimed at easing pressure from the Trump administration. Our Ian Jin explains.
The Senate of Mexico approved new tariff hikes on Wednesday, under which Mexico plans to impose up to 50% tariffs on 1,463 products from Asian countries that are not under a free trade agreement. This includes countries like Thailand, India, and Indonesia, but also China and South Korea. Set to take effect on January 1st, the new measures are being implemented on the back of President Claudia Sheinbaum's call for the country needing stronger tools to boost domestic production. South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources held an emergency meeting with Korean automobile, auto parts and steel companies on Thursday, a day after the tariff hikes were approved. During the meeting, the ministry assessed that Mexico's tariff hike measures will likely only have a limited impact on South Korean exports due to Mexico's exemption on tariffs on imports of raw materials for export production. Most of Korea's exports to Mexico consist of components and raw materials processed by Korean companies to produce goods that are then exported to the United States. Despite such arrangements, official negotiations of a free trade agreement between South Korea and Mexico have remained stalled since talks began back in 2006. In 2000, the two countries signed an investment guarantee agreement, but this framework does not provide tariff exemptions. Addressing this, the South Korean Trade Ministry is set to convene a meeting soon to analyze the impact of the latest tariff hikes and to discuss possible countermeasures with business leaders. For Japan, as it has a free trade agreement with Mexico, this means it stands to gain a price advantage over Korea once the tariff hikes take effect. But China has warned that Mexico's new tariff measures would substantially undermine the interests of trade. China's Ministry of Commerce said that it hopes Mexico will correct such unilateralist and protectionist practices as soon as possible. Meanwhile, this comes as the United States continues to push countries in Latin America to limit their economic ties with China. Ian Jin, 아리랑 뉴스.
Authorities in the southern city of Gwangju have temporarily stopped their search operations due to unsteady conditions at the scene of a public library construction site, which collapsed on Thursday. 2 missing workers have yet to be accounted for. President Lee Jae-myung has ordered all available resources to be mobilized for the rescue operation. Oh Soo-young has the latest.
Fire authorities in Gwangju stopped all search operations from 9:20 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Friday, citing dangerously unstable steel beams at the site of the new Gwangju Metropolitan Library. The framework, which was twisted, severed and weighed down by concrete, poses a high risk of secondary collapse, forcing rescue crews to step back until it has stabilized. The National Fire Agency held an emergency assessment with related agencies this morning and concluded that no search can proceed without full safety secured. Structural removal and rescue will move together only once conditions allow. Before the suspension, overnight operations continued, but with no trace of the 2 workers trapped, when a steel frame gave way as concrete was being poured. 4 workers were buried in Thursday's 2 p.m. collapse. 2 were recovered but later confirmed dead. Officials believe the initial failure on the rooftop triggered a chain reaction, causing the collapse. Experts point to faulty steel frame connections as a possible cause. Stabilization work is ongoing as debris is removed using heavy machinery, while thermal imaging cameras and other detection devices scan for signs of life. But as time passes and the concrete hardens, access is becoming increasingly difficult. President Lee Jae-myung has ordered relevant ministries to commit all available resources to the rescue.
행안부나 노동부나 등 관련 부처에서 인적 물적 자산을 최대한 동원해가지고 일단 구조에 총력을 다하기를 바랍니다.
The Labour Minister has been directed to travel to the site immediately, while senior safety officials cancelled scheduled briefings to join response operations. Oh Si-young, Arirang News.
Visitors to the National Museum of Korea have surpassed 6 million so far this year, marking the highest annual attendance since its founding. The milestone pushes its cumulative visitor count past 100 million and positions the museum as the world's fourth most visited in the 2025 global rankings, following the Louvre, the Vatican Museums, and the British Museum. The museum credits innovative exhibitions and youth-focused programs, as well as a strong performance from its merchandise line, for its growing public appeal. South Korean entertainment giant HYBE has ranked 4th in Billboard's top promoters category. According to Billboard's 2025 year-end box score charts on Friday, HYBE earned roughly $469 million or around 691 billion Korean won from world tours over the past year. Thanks to tours from 17, BTS, J-Hope, and ENHYPEN, HYBE held 213 shows and drew 3.3 million fans. In Billboard's top tours chart, Stray Kids became the only K-pop act in the global top 10, landing at number 10 with $185 million and 1.3 million fans attending their Dominate World Tour. 17 followed at 17th, J-Hope 32nd, and ENHYPEN 37th. There are many reasons to wait for Fridays, and one of them is definitely the arts and culture coverage by our culture correspondent, Park Gun-woo. He's here in the studio with us. Welcome, Gun-woo.
Thanks for having me, Doyen.
What do you have for us today?
So this week, the prestigious Golden Globe Awards announced its nominees for the upcoming ceremony scheduled for January 11th. Star director Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice has been nominated for Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, marking the first time a Korean movie has ever been selected in this main category. Director Bong Joon-ho's Parasite previously won Best Foreign Language Film in 2020, but No Other Choice will now compete in a top-tier category, going up against 5 other films, including One Battle After Another and Begonia. The film is also nominated in the Best Non-English Language Film category, where his film, Decision to Leave, was also a nominee 2 years ago. Its lead actor, Lee Byung-hun, has additionally surprised many by receiving a nomination for Best Male Actor in a Motion Picture, competing with 5 actors including Leonardo DiCaprio and Timothée Chalamet. One expert explains why all of this is so meaningful.
The awards has been criticized for lacking multicultural representation. But after its hosting body changed several years ago, it began considering racial and cultural diversity much more. International awards also don't nominate actors out of nowhere. They look at global activities and achievements. Lee Byung-hun's longtime work in Hollywood was likely taken into account, giving him a chance to actually win.
He added that even if No Other Choice does not end up winning, the nomination alone is already a major achievement, and that's because the film presents a well-suited thematic focus, addressing unemployment and the challenges posed by AI in the workplace, all through a black comedy approach that balances both commercial appeal and artistic value.
Right, I thoroughly enjoy that movie actually, but I heard No Other Choice was not the only one that was in the spotlight this year.
Right, so I guess you also watched this film as well. It's K-pop Demon Hunters, directed by director Maggie Kang, which also drew significant attention as it received 3 nominations: Best Animated Motion Picture, Best Original Song, and Cinematic and Box Office Achievement. The same expert explains why this accomplishment is already remarkable in itself.
Others competing aren't original creations, but K-pop Demon Hunters is. It's becoming increasingly difficult to find original content in Hollywood, and the fact that an original animated film centered on K-pop was nominated is highly meaningful. Also, it's notable that a film released on a global streaming platform can still be appreciated on such a large scale. Shows how content distribution is changing.
And we also need to take a closer look at Begonia, as it too has a strong connection to Korea. Some people may wonder why, but the film is actually a remake of the 2003 South Korean movie Save the Green Planet. The expert elaborates on how this reflects a broader trend, showing that it's not only Korean original content that's shaping the global cinema landscape.
We're seeing multiple forms of Korean content expanding abroad. Not only original works, but also projects based on Korean culture, as well as collaborations with global platforms. Because all these different approaches to localization are successful. At the same time, even if a Korean project doesn't win an award, it still gives us confidence that greater achievements are on the way.
Right, like he says, there's greater achievements on the way, but this year has been particularly special with Korean content. How can we keep this going?
Right, so as you just mentioned, this year was another remarkable year for Korean content, as it got dominant globally, with many productions making a global splash. So now is the time to think about the next step, what Korea needs to do to sustain this momentum.
We need more thorough analysis of both content and audiences. More academic support and case-by-case studies are needed. If I were a content planner, I would create a global K-pop audition program, giving participants a mission to express what K-pop identity means through missions like cover dances. Then the essence of K-pop would naturally stand out.
He added that platforms like Arirang TV could also play a key role in this process, while also emphasizing that stronger government support will be necessary.
Right, Gwangju, and we all know you're in the forefront of all that. Thank you for that report, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. I guess I have no other choice but to go home. Have a nice weekend as well.
Get going.
Temperatures took a sharp dive overnight. In Seoul, daytime highs will stay around 3 degrees Celsius tomorrow and Sunday, and early winter cold is expected to stick around through the weekend. Moreover, rain and snow are expected across the country. Starting late tomorrow afternoon, heavy and wet snow will fall mainly in the center inland areas at a rate of around 1 to 3 centimeters per hour. Up to 10 centimeters of heavy snow is forecast in the western parts of Gangwon-do province and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. We'll avoid sub-zero cold tomorrow morning with Seoul and Gwangju at 2 degrees, Daejeon and Gwangju at 1 degree. Daily highs will move up to only 3 degrees in Seoul, 8 degrees in Daejeon. We'll see another round of snow on Sunday after tomorrow's rain and snow take a break overnight. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That's all for this Friday evening. I'm Kim Do-yeon. Hope you have a great weekend.